Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
At the very outset, let me welcome Mr. Ravikanth Mididhodi. He is the Chief Technical Officer and Global Director for JNF Australia Private Limited, and also heading JNF India Private Limited. Ravikanth, we're most welcome to this webinar session. Raviji is basically in the field for the last 25 years and has a lot of experience on engineering designs and other solutions. And he has been an expert in structural engineering and also has spent a lot of time in working on the digital workflows within the 1,000 projects he has handled so far globally. And he is accustomed and attuned with a lot of standards globally, notably Indian, Australian, American, and British standards. So he brings with him a lot of experience on structural design and more so in the realm of the digitization element of the structural element and also the BIM element. So we welcome you, sir, for this session, and it's really great that you joined us with your vast experience globally on a topic which is a little uh, gray for many of us because structural design itself is a tough topic for many of us, and at the same time you're also tuning it with the digitization element, which makes it little much more easier for a common man to work. Otherwise, it's a very tough element to crack in terms of when we did it manually many years back. So thank you for that insight and the presentation on this project. So this project which we are looking at is a very unique project. It is the second largest bridge in the country, the first largest being the Atal Setu bridge in Navi Mumbai. But it is the first largest bridge in India in terms of the river bridge. That Atal Setu is a sea bridge and this is a river bridge. And a 19.3-kilometer bridge from Fulbari to, I think, Dhubri, which is connecting the borders of Assam and Meghalaya. So this is a mega project, and this project was initiated in 2008, but it saw the light of the day only in 2018. And there was a time period when it was envisaged to finish in 8 years until 2028. And I think by as of now, the bridge is almost 60% complete. And obviously, in patches somewhere, the finishing is going on somewhere. Probably the abutments are being laid and approach roads are being done. So it's a massive project, and one important part about this project is that there are multiple bridges coming up in the area which are connecting various elements, various cities to the bridge, and this is strategically important because of the Bangladesh border in the vicinity and access to the Seven Sisters, which India strategically will need and we will have. So it's a huge bridge. One of the bridges I remember I have gone to that long back was between Hong Kong and Guangzhou, similar bridge, and that led in a way to amalgamate or to annex Hong Kong in a very positive way for China because that created a good road and a good connection between these two with Hong Kong and the mainland China. So this is a great event from historical perspective in terms of the bridge. And a lot of players are involved. I know my own organization, Larsen Tubro, is involved, and SP Singla is involved, and many other are involved. And it's a mega project in many ways. So, sir, we would like to take your support and insights on how this whole thing was planned, designed in terms of the structural elements, in terms of the digitization element of this project. And while you are presenting, we'll also try to look at some options and questions from my side and from the audience can raise in the chat box also. So that while you're running, we can ask questions so that we can give some sort of correlation to the slides and pictures which we see while you are making the presentation. So So the floor is yours. And again, most welcome on this platform of Building Smart India and CDCPI. And all yours, sir, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for a nice introduction, giving a kind of context onto the kind of a webinar, what you are setting it rightly. Yeah. What I'll do is straightly, I'll get into a kind of a topic where I can share my screen. Okay. Hope the screen is visible. Just want to have a confirmation.
Yes, it is visible.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Rajeev ji, and thank you for the opportunity, CDCP, Building Smart. It is certainly a kind of a great opportunity to talk about. And yes, as we say about a kind of the designs in India are fantastic, I would say, right? The designs when it is getting on the kind of an upstream, when it is need to be produced at a kind of a very high level, we are very good. We always look at a kind of how these designs are getting translated onto the ground is something which we would like to have a kind of a big takeaway over here. Along that, how technology, a kind of a transformation which is undergoing what we say is a kind of a building information modeling and the kind of a BIM authoring tools, all those things, how is going to be embedded into kind of an engineering, which gives kind of a very great visibility on the construction site. So the primary takeaway of the audience would be is how we are taking into a seamless technology or a cutting edge technology where we are looking at a kind of a zero rework or a kind of a zero untouched models. I would like to give a kind of a bit of a experience what we have undergone in building these objects or maybe using the kind of a tools for next 30 minutes. So basically, yes, certainly is a bridge on Brahmaputra is something which we are going to talk about. Along with that, we would like to see what are the kind of a remarkable developments or the kind of a bit of a glimpses of the case studies at the kind of a global instance. You'll be enlightened with a kind of a remarkable a kind of a technological updates or developments which are happening where engineering is primarily getting embedded with a kind of a technology. I think that is something which is a kind of great experience where as Rajeev sir has said, like the engineering or the kind of a structures need to be embedded with a kind of a tech-based or maybe automated solutions. So while I go through the kind of a presentation, you'll experience these kind of a topics primarily on the kind of a scope or approach, the basic highlights, what are the benefits, what are the innovation, what we have undergone, and what challenges we have faced, especially to make a kind of a constructability. And the major takeaway. If at all, if I have to ask a kind of a little question, how do you feel that there is a more than 25 to 30% of a project delays come from rework? I would definitely say most of the audience would say yes, right? And that delay is something which is going to be a kind of a waste of time and efforts across all the stakeholders. Before getting into the topic, I was just thinking to give a kind of a bit of a glimpse of what is JNF. JNF is basically a 25-year-old a kind of a global engineering company, which is primarily focusing on a kind of a digital construction engineering service provider across all the major cities of the globe. We closely work with the kind of a contractors, design consultants, fabricators, government agencies for a constructible, reliable, cost-effective, efficient engineering solutions. We are now 400 plus qualified people sitting in Chennai, Delhi, and we offer solutions across the globe. So what we are trying to say is the global learnings, what the experience we are gaining, that we would like to bring to kind of Indian capacity, add value benefits to the clients. And these are the kind of a spectrum of engineering services. If you look at it is something for civil structural architecture, MEP, all the kind of a discipline specifics we offer from you, and all the kind of a digital technology what we apply and deliver is a kind of has gained a kind of immense importance. And what I'm trying to say is JNF is something which is a trusted long-term partner for a tier one contractors, fabricators, consultants across the globe, specifically Australia, Middle East market, and Europe and US markets, where we have brought in a kind of immense digital technologies has brought a kind of a great benefits to the project. And all the kind of a digital engineering construction solutions are ISO certified, and our teams are fully equipped with the kind of international standards and project specific requirements. And if at all a kind of a software solutions need to be applied, all the BIM authoring tools, nothing to name across, all the kind of things we can adopt and apply onto the project. This I would like to bring a kind of a solution. What I'm trying to say is the designs are immensely great, but more important, we focus on a kind of a constructible engineering solution. I think this plays a kind of a remarkable role where the design, especially on a kind of a design D&B contracts, can get a kind of a great benefits out of it. I'll talk more about it, where any kind of a project which can undergo a modeling which requires a kind of a parametric objects, say it's a kind of a loading 100, 200, 300, 500 we have done. And more important, I would like to talk something about the kind of innovation automation we have gained on certain projects. So what were the kind of materials you say is a kind of steel, concrete, rebar, precast? I think all these elements, once it is can be modeled and we can extract the kind of a documentations what is needed for construction. And of course, if it is needed something which is very simple, easy, we can also do it in a kind of a 2D platform. We do a kind of a lot of kind of a takeoff works in a 2D and 3D based applications. I'm going to talk about that. This is something which is a kind of a great learning I had personally to understand how BIM implementation adoption can be done for a best of engineering principles with tech embedment. Whatever is the kind of a materials you talk about, whatever the item you talk about, whatever the discipline you talk about, we can bring everything into a kind of a collaborated environment. I think that is what is a kind of a technology. Thanks to a kind of a technology during COVID, there is an immense development happened, which we could take an advantage from all the kind of a technological gains. We have a modeling, plenty of applications. We have a coordinations, BIM collaboration tools. We can get up to a kind of a 4D, 5D, 6D, and we can run everything on a kind of a common data environment. And we can make a kind of a collaborated models and clash-free applications can be produced, thereby a kind of all the stakeholders who are involved in the kind of a job, say is the kind of a design consultant and all the stakeholders, they can get involved. We can bring the kind of the GFCs or the shop drawings in a required outputs, and also is a kind of a benefit to the manufacturers, fabricators, where the machine-fed CNC files can also be produced with. I have set a kind of a little context to see how we have to avoid reworking. What we are now trying to see is a kind of a reduced rework, reduced zero rework. Maybe we are tending towards the kind of a zero reworks because design changes are something which is quite immense. How we may have to optimize this kind of a design changes during the flow of a job. These are the kind of a few glimpses which marketing team has captured. When you talk about the kind of a bridges, there are a kind of immense bridges and a history we have it in India, like right from a stone, masonry, steel, concrete. Right now we are talking about a kind of a Chenab, the kind of a rail bridge. Along with that, prominently, I think Rajeev ji also mentioned about the kind of the longest bridges in the world, and we are in tandem. But what I see is a kind of a challenge. Yes, of course, different kinds of various types of bridges can be designed. But the major challenge is something how we may have to get this kind of a purpose and the functionality very well. How we can look for a kind of obstacles or the kind of optimizing the kind of a workflows plays a kind of a vital role. So what I see is a kind of a little disconnect happens between the design and the construction. What is the precision or the detail what is needed during the kind of a design is need to be translated into the kind of ground level. So the applications or the kind of a technology which can connect very well to see at the kind of a downstream, what informations which are needed for the construction team to look at a kind of a seamless integration to the kind of construction. So may I ask one particular thing, what is the biggest bottleneck in your current engineering to construction workflow? Is it the design issues or the poor inputs or maybe clash reviews or maybe a kind of a data transfers or any other things which play a kind of a major challenge in your construction? So this is what I thought of maybe giving a kind of little expression. So globally, I think the standards which are adopted at the kind of a policy integration, fabrication, and the collaboration are very well getting in tandem. In India, what I see is largely becoming an optional. What I would say, it should be a mandate. And we use majority of the things for the visualizations and clash coordinations. And moreover, we are relying on the kind of a high degree of 2D drawings rather than 3D visualizations. So and all our workflows are very fragmented. So basically a kind of a BIM awareness is needed. So that is the reason we are here to see a little bit of a kind of a learning what we have done, we would like to share. And of course, there is a kind of little high cost at certain times, which we are not ready to pay for it. But of course, in India, the things are changing. The contractors the Jains, especially on the kind of a design partners, would like to spend time and money to see that how a kind of a challenges can be converted into a kind of a comfort. So what we understand, especially on a kind of an LOD requirements, much spoken in a kind of a building front. But when you talk about the kind of a linear structures like bridges, tunnels, roads, highways, there is also a kind of a degree of LOD can be embedded. So you know that LOD 300, 400, 500 plays a kind of a vital role. We may have to define properly into a kind of a BEP. So then we know how the size, shape, geometry parameters can be populated at respective stages, and we can get a kind of a great benefit of during the construction and seamless integration with the kind of a design and other stakeholders. So this is what is something which we have learned is LODs need to be properly defined at the respective stages, and applications what are needed to adopt to build this kind of parametric objects at respective stages can be well defined, so that we have a kind of a definition, a kind of a policy mandate on a project to see that how the informations can be exchanged between the stakeholders and a proper informed decision making can be taken over. So I've mentioned about, yes, of course, we can get into a kind of LOD 500 levels as well. And this is one umbrella which I thought of maybe setting a kind of a right context. Yes, these are the kind of a linear jobs. When you look at a kind of a bridges, roads, tunnels, utilities, and many other things, once the kind of a models are produced in any kind of a platform, we would be in a position to extract the informations by doing a kind of a proper collaboration, interoperability between the kind of a various applications to see that the kind of interfacing and also a kind of a coordination between the items can be eradicated during the design phase. And the to and fro process, which usually happens, can be visualized, and we can look at a kind of a informed decision making. If I have to set a kind of little context on a bridge workflow, if we may have to have a kind of a proper design inputs, maybe we need to bring a kind of a design consultant in place, and we see all the kind of a profiles, alignments, what all the geometric or the size shape parameters can be brought in, and applications are available readily. We need to implement it properly. And once we get into a kind of a proper visualization, what we say is LOD 300, a concrete and all the kind of an associated elements which are related to the kind of a particular girder or item can be populated. Thereby we can add this kind of a reinforcement at precisely at every locations to see that LOD 400 model can be populated. Likewise, I thought of maybe giving a kind of little also highlight on borehole modeling. This also plays a kind of a vital role in a linear structures, especially tunnels, roads, where we can import all the kind of a geotechnical informations into this application, and we can visualize the kind of a complete soil strata data, and we can extract all the volumes. We will be in a position to know, contractor can know if there is a kind of a major contamination or a chemical attack, or the soil which need to be discarded as per the environmental norms and regulations. So the applications are plenty. We are applying onto the kind of a dam structures, or maybe a kind of mass excavation cut-fill sections. We adopt these tools. Oh, I would like to get back to a kind of a topic which everyone will be looking for is a river on the bridge, what is being constructed on the Brahmaputra. We had a kind of little contribution made with a kind of a DNB contractor. Yeah, especially when you look at a kind of a bridges, the superstructure elements will be of a highest complexity, I would say. So that superstructure may have kind of a bridge girders, maybe the bridge girders, maybe it's all maybe kind of a match cast segments. And along with that, it has got a kind of a pier section where we have a pier table and upper pylons and lower pylons and the guideways and the cableways. If at all, we may have to visualize to produce the kind of a complete 3D models, parametric objects of this particular thing. Unless otherwise we do that, it would be highly difficult to get the kind of a context very clear. For this project, I got a call from Aditya Sharma, director of SP Singla, saying that, yeah, Ravi, things are not working on construction site because all the PT cables which are set out dimensions for the PT cables are not fitting because these are the match cast segments. And when we are not coordinating well, everything is going onto the site is absolutely waste. Unless it is being engineered and it is a visualization and entire models are parametric, and you take this level of detailing to LOD 400 and do a complete clash coordination checks and before going for a casting, otherwise we may have to get into kind of a hassle construction on site. In order to avoid, I think, a complete LOD 400 models were produced with this kind of a basic workflows. where we got all these informations from the client in terms of a kind of the concrete profiles. They, especially on the PT cables, are having a kind of XYZ dimensions, where we have a kind of X and Y we can manage, but if we are able to get X, Y, Z dimensions, then we have to produce a kind of a 3D profiles appropriately and bring into a kind of a platform and construct a kind of a girders. Before setting, we do a kind of a complete detailed questionnaire. Every item was knocked off. Every element what is required to build a virtual model was discussed with the kind of a design stakeholders, contractors, fabricators, and what format, what information is needed, what level of information are needed. Everything was well documented, so that what all the kind of informations which are recorded and informed decisions were taken. And these are the kind of the informations we are getting from the designer. Of course, by looking at that, things, the size, shape, the heights, lengths, widths seems to be okay. But when you try to collaborate or construct a kind of a digital model, we face a kind of a coordination issues. And these are the kind of reinforcements for critical elements and the concrete informations we are getting it. But of course, when we put this kind of informations back into kind of a models, we have identified a kind of enormous challenges, especially the PT cables for clashing. So we have to produce for the complete bridge, a PT cable profile informations and alignment informations to see that these are all well aligned with the kind of design parameters. And then we had produced a complete 3D model with a concrete, with a kind of reinforcement details, and extracted all the informations what is needed for the construction, including the drawings and the bar minute schedules in a detailed way, the way the kind of a rebar manufacturer, the precast yard needs for it. And these are the kind of a few images I thought maybe showing. Possibly what I can do is I can also play a little bit of a video so that you will have a kind of a clear-cut alignment, how basically we have done it. So you look at a kind of a one girder, the concrete modeling is done using a kind of a beam authoring tools. We have set the kind of a parameters very clearly. All the kind of the first thing would be needed is the kind of a coordinate systems. And the size, shape, assembly parameters were constructed right from scratch, so that every detail what is embedded into a kind of application is a parametric. We would be in a position to resize it, and make such a kind of a digitally ready model first. It has got all the components of the bridge elements. Say it's a kind of you look at a kind of the shear locks, shear connectors, the kind of the penetrations, the provisions what are needed for the liftings. Everything is being digitally built with a kind of a very precise dimensions as per the design. And once we do, and the PT cables, the PT cables are produced with a kind of a right XYZ dimensions. And thereby we would be in a position to populate these informations. And all these are parametric, thanks to application again. And then we were placing each of these rebar on the faces with a kind of a true dimensions, including the rib, because ribs are important because the diameters which are running through is maybe 25 to 40 diameter at 100 spacing. So every rebar is placed at a kind of a right position to see that the clash coordinations can be performed digitally. And we have used Navisworks manage, that is a kind of a first application. And we also trained the kind of all the stakeholders of the project to see that what the design informations are getting populated. We are also coordinating. See, look at the kind of reinforcement, PT cables, all the kind of interfacing elements were coordinated well in order to produce a kind of a clash reports can be eradicated during the design phase itself before getting onto the kind of a yard. So this is something which is a kind of a biggest success we can bring onto the kind of AEC industry, where linear structures can also be detailed with a kind of a precision and digitally built before going for the site. So likewise, what I'm trying to say is, yes, such kind of things, maybe it looks simply when you visualize, but that is something which is possible. So it is not easy what I say about. There are a kind of like any other project, demands for the kind of a request for informations, where every information need to be properly recorded, and the discrepancies what is identified in the kind of inputs need to be populated, discussed, eradicated. And these are the kind of a detailed clash reports. Of course, we can straight away show in the kind of Navisworks, discuss with the designers to see that there are a little clashes between the kind of rebars and the PT cables. And this is what is a kind of a major problem in the industry, because these things are not recognized during the design. This is what I was trying to say is designs are fantastic, but when you go for a kind of a downstream where every element can be modeled, produced, visualized, you see a kind of a very serious errors. So then you have to go back and look for a kind of a redesign of these things. Likewise, all the clashes were well reported, coordinated, resolutions were made and incorporated into the models to produce a kind of a clash-free model. So that is what is a kind of a success. You look at a kind of the models which are produced in the kind of an application straight onto the construction. It resembles it here. So this is something which is a kind of a one of the success we thought of maybe sharing with you. So all these girders, now it becomes a kind of a symmetry. Of course, there are kind of a 36 different girders identified. And once 36 girders were done, you can run these things for 19 kilometers. So that is what it is. The engineering is done digitally with all the kind of a technological amendment, the product onto the site. The translation of the digital models getting onto the site is seamless. And these cutting edge technologies can play a kind of a vital role in saving a lot of time and money. And thereby we get a kind of a very finished product like what you look at on. And these are the kind of a few images we have produced. And this is a kind of a great success for the contractors.
Ravikantji, one quick question that we have a process in design called, we call it identity, and this is called feed, the front-end engineering and design. So basically the design, that iterations are meant to make the design optimal. So how do you think and how the digital element help you to create more optimized iterations without losing time and control of the project?
Absolutely. What you spot on, yeah. What you have indicated is that the kind of a digital workflows I am trying to express, this has to go in run in tandem with a kind of a design. Because once the kind of a preliminary design basis size, shape parameters are done, we should be having a kind of a little bit of a kind of LOD 200 modeling need to be adopted to see that whether the design is viable. Sometimes it came to a kind of a conclusion where once the design is done, we were placing all the kind of reinforcement PT cables and all the interfacing. We were not getting a space for a concrete. The space between the rebars was less than 20 mm, which is going against the principles. So we need to discard the designs. So the design optimizations, whatever is something which is done, we need to have a kind of a little bit of a visualizations done, see that the designs are viable and optimized. And definitely it is something when designs are getting optimized, we also look at the kind of a constructability aspects as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And these are the kind of a major takeaways. The challenges are, of course, definitely is complex geometry, congestion. Look at the kind of drawing inconsistencies, the coordinations, the barman schedules accuracy. So these are the kind of major takeaways for the contractor. The contractor is in a position to do a kind of early coordinations. That's what I think Rajeev mentioned about. If you do a kind of early coordination during the design phase, the major reworking can be avoided. And this is what I would say is, I'm not saying that 3D rebar detailing is needed everywhere. If, of course, where the interfacing and where you may have to do a kind of a lot of coordination between the elements needed, certainly you may have to require a kind of a 3D reinforcement, then you save a lot of amount of time. And it helps in a kind of a very clear communications. And of course, the skills are available in India. We can definitely utilize the kind of an applications to bring a kind of optimum results. The similar projects were repeated for other similar kind of instances was repeated for other projects also. I think this is something which is, I would say, is a kind of a day in, day out, where we produce the kind of a documentations what are needed onto the kind of a complex projects. Yeah. I think I would like to take a few more examples, especially the developments and other things which are also happening on a structural steel as well. Okay, on a simple and easy, yes, you know that we are using a kind of a tremendous applications. That's all good. But what I would like to show is some of the examples which are very complex, especially when you have a kind of a double curvature and pre-camber. The obligations which are available are very, very few. We may have to do a kind of a programming. Yeah, that's what I'm just trying to introduce a kind of a Grasshopper Rhino script, what we have utilized for this particular project, where entire kind of a bridge cross sections were produced. We have written a kind of a script, and from the script, we have a kind of a live links established with a kind of applications. Then all you look at this kind of a girder, yeah, the box section in steel. This is a complete steel section with a kind of a 120 meters high, the pylons, which is running through. It's a very tricky, simple, but the geometry wise, and the size-wise, we may have to do it in a kind of a workaround. So when it comes to that instances, the time pressure is also very high. So it is quite inevitable. We may have to produce this kind of a programs to see that we produce a kind of a scripting. And because most of the kind of things now we are getting onto these workflows where the kind of the parametric objects can be linked to these kind of scripts where the size, shape, things and all can be properly interconnected, and we produce the models. This is something which we have attempted during the kind of a COVID season, but the current projects, what I would like to show is one example where we have gone one step ahead. This is one of the project where it's a highly complex, the bridge girders, the structural steel. You can see that the four kind of a trough girders which are running through. You can just imagine a Kakipara in Chennai. Yeah, yeah.
Please. Now you're
Yes.
using digitization for intricate modeling of like connections and when the bearings coming in, the joints and all. So what is your opinion if devoid of digitization tools which we have now, if this would have to be done manually, what could be the challenges and in the time frame and the skill levels? Would it be possible to do such a project if we have digital things not being used here in this project?
I would say is manually it is, yes, we've been doing it to certain degree, but while you come across with a kind of a geometric properties like, yeah, where we have the kind of a double curvature and a pre-cambers, if it is an obligatory span, I can agree with you. Maybe we can do it manually and we can go for the fabrication. But one essence, which is, yeah, we have a time, definitely we can try with that, but it's just nearly, I would say, impossible for this particular project because there was a time was a basic essence for us where we may have to construct these digital models in 3 months. And if you are doing a kind of a BIM models also, it was not possible. If you have to use a BIM models, it was taking 6 months. So for this project, what we have done, we have produced these the what you look at kind of on the picture, the bottom flange, the webs, the stiffeners, the bracings, all the kind of the shear studs. We have to use a kind of a complete scripting again. Yeah. What I would like to say, this is something which is zero untouched models. The basic, all the size, shape parameters were completely linked with the kind of a parametric objects, and the design coordinations are a kind of design coordinations which are required to be done during the designer, where there is a kind of a little bit of a kind of a coordinations in terms of a size, shape need to be modified. We were trying to modify in the script, and we were linking directly to the kind of a models. And these models, what you look at is a zero untouched. These are taken to the kind of a fabrication level. This can directly go to the kind of, we created the kind of NC files. It was directly going to the kind of China. I think in India, we don't have that facility. We were trying to ship everything from China to Australia. Yeah. So this is one of the kind of the milestone project recently we have achieved this year, where I would say is zero untouched models and zero rework is something which we would like to bring to the industry. And I would say is a kind of highly disruptive technology we are working with. But this is something to achieve or to gain over the time, because time is becoming a kind of an essence for it. So by this, all this kind of a documentations, what I would say is completely error-free, and it is globally accepted. And we are bringing the kind of designs onto the ground, which are seamlessly getting integrated by using these cutting-edge technologies. By this, we are setting up a kind of definitely a global standard in terms of a quality, on-time, clientele satisfaction. And these are we are striving towards to achieve the betterment of communities. I think these are the kind of a little.
Ravikanth, how did you optimize the manpower here in line? I mean there was the digitalization coming in. How did you optimize manpower? If one could have looked at a manual option, what was the efficiency there?
For these, some of the bridges is something manual thing was ruled out, I would say. And if at all we may have to use, maybe the time is not an essence, possibly we may have to have at least 4x to 5x people. Yeah. Here for this project, we have used 12 people. But if it is manually, we may have to do in a digital way, or maybe kind of a BIM models, we may have to use 60 people.
Okay, so there was a good efficiency vis-a-vis manpower usage.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
I think
you had read a question, Ravikanth, about constructability. Constructability, which what I think in my mind is that the design should match exactly the conditions at the ground level. Okay, so when you design the buildings, the bridges and bridge components at your desk, were they 100% adaptable at the ground level, or what was the departure between the design as built and design as constructed?
as of now, I get a report is zero error. And there was 100%, there was only deviations in the design. The kind of the component level, when we do that, the designs were trying to update. The design drawings, IFC, GFCs were updated, yeah? Because some places, geometric properties were not visualized in the design in a 2D formats. But when you do a kind of a complete digital 3D workflows, the design was slightly appended, added in order to make a kind of an as-built documentation. That is what is a kind of a precision accuracy we are talking about. And when it is going to a kind of a fabricator, it is something which is a kind of a zero error. Yeah, absolutely zero error. That's what I would say is a thanks to technology, the NC files or whatever the kind of a step files, the software vendors are able to produce, it is seamlessly integrated into a kind of a CNC machines, take it as a kind of a rebar or a structural steel component, and we are getting with a precision. So far is something I had a kind of a zero complaint. Yeah.
That's quite an impressive take on this. I keep the floor open to the audience for asking any questions through the chat box. While the audience are framing their questions, I want Ravikanth, one more insight. Uh, Now, basically, we are looking at, as you know, we have our Viksit Bharat Vision 2047. We are doing Atmanirbhar India, and this bridge is one good example of building such mega structures with indigenous brains, and of course, the technologies can be global. So, how do you think such technologies will create that vision of Viksit Bharat 2047 more quickly than what one could have anticipated?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good question, very interesting. Absolutely, we can accelerate, we can expedite the kind of a digital technology we are looking into. Definitely, it need to be embedded during the kind of early stages of the design. Yeah. Otherwise, what is happening as we talk about in the industry, like everyone works in a silos. Yeah, and at the upstream, everything is happening in silos. When it is the designs or maybe design consultants says structural, architectural, or the kind of the mechanical, electrical guys, they work in silos. And there should be a kind of a BIM consulting firms or BIM forums where consultant is onboarding very early during the kind of RFP or maybe a consortium stage itself. And this need to be a properly a pre-qualifications need to be there. I don't see much pre-qualifications happening at the top level where the kind of maybe there are very less vendors are available in the infrastructure side. There should be a kind of a BIM advisory board where pre-qualifies the kind of a right people, a right technology, right BEPs are produced in meeting the kind of a right EARs. What we have to set up proper standards. I think definitely the Viksit Bar 2047 we can expedite.
Yeah, I think one important point you said that this the implementation of BIM or such digitization elements should be part of the contract. Now, moving forward, what is your advice to new projects which are coming up and which they should use such technologies? So, how do you integrate these in a way that it's compulsory to use such technologies for the efficiencies which we already have seen? So, what's your advice on that,
Yeah.
Ravikanth?
Yeah, I would say like CDCP, the buildingSMART should make a first is the mandate is not in India. Yeah, as you know, there is no mandate, especially when we have to create this kind of digital technologies onto the projects. So there is a kind of a bit of a freedom. Yeah, of course, there are kind of certain PWD, CBWD have made a kind of a mandates on BIM implementation, but more it has to be on the kind of infrastructure side. The mandate need to be made, and the kind of the right people to be boarded onto the people where we have a kind of the implementation is at a greatest success. Yeah, so the advice is something is on the mandate we need to work with. And is India is a highly price sensitive market right now, everybody knows that, where when we look for a kind of a pricing part and stuff at a kind of an implementation stage, then there is a kind of a capital the budgeting which is done during that time is not viable, most of the projects are taking a kind of a second step. Until there is a kind of a huge damage happens onto the site, there's a bad experience, then the people are shifting towards a kind of a BIM. Otherwise, if I have to say is a kind of a mandate and there is a kind of a little bit of a capital budgeting is done, definitely I think it's a kind of a great benefits the project can be extended with.
I think one link question which one of our audience, Sudhakar KVS, has just written. In fact, I was wanting to ask you that did we go to a 5D BIM implementation in this project? And if yes, did it allow some cost optimization?
No, we haven't done onto this particular 5D things. Yeah. But 4D and 5D is something which definitely it can be done based on the kind of when there is a limited cost which is available. And this need to be done during the kind of a design coordination phase. But however, when it is awarded to the kind of a contract and when the contractor is coming for a kind of a visualization, it was definitely the budgeting was there. And there was no kind of a cost optimization was required during that stage. Yeah. So it was more on a kind of a visualization and to see there are no wastage of match cast segments happens during erection. Yeah, that was an intent over here. But otherwise, what you said is right. Yeah, the 4D, 5D can play also a kind of a vital role. And I know it is getting implemented into the kind of a metros project. There are many players we are looking into and see that there is a kind of a good cost optimization can happen. And thanks to technology, there are plenty of applications can be done.
You said one of the points in your session was about the LOD 400, 450 and 500 documentation, which is basically leading to maintenance of the structure. So that means that every component is properly tagged and maybe labeled in a way that tomorrow if we need any maintenance elements, we know where to go and which part to be maintained. So how will that help in optimizing the maintenance cost in overall of the project?
Yeah, what you may be possibly talking at a kind of the 6D maybe, yeah? What is the 6 dimensions where the kind of bit of a facility management and asset management tax can also be populated into the kind of, I would say it would be much being utilized onto the kind of a building sectors. Of course, this can also be, we have given a lot of non-graphical informations into the models, yeah? Let's say is a concrete cover, many elements, the non-graphical informations, which are like grade of concrete, many of the grade of steel, these are all kind of a non-graphical. You cannot see that as a kind of an asset into this. So we have populated those informations into this project so that in future, if at all during the kind of a maintenance, let's say is when you have to go for a kind of the bearing replacements after 25 years, or maybe we have to look for a kind of any maintenance which are needed, or look for a kind of a scan of these bridge structures, you can definitely see that how the rebars are placed at each of the locations, and we can interpret with the kind of a scan and look for a kind of a maintenance, or maybe tomorrow we may have to look for a kind of a extension of the bridges maybe. Yeah, so you know what the informations which are already in place and what is constructed, how we may have to go for it. Definitely it will be helping for rehabilitation and retrofitting.
For the new user, for somebody who wants to use BIM in his project, is there a minimum project cost with which he should use BIM, or any project can be utilized using BIM or this 3D model or whatsoever?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, very tricky, I would say, to answer. Yeah, basically, I think the projects need to have a kind of a specific budget allocated for BIM. Yeah, if the project is identified is a critical infrastructure, I would say. Yeah, so there are a critical infrastructure project like now we talk about data centers are also critical infrastructure projects. Yeah, so when we identify that, definitely we may have to allocate a kind of a proper budget during the design coordinations, implementation of a BIM into the project. So then there'll be a kind of a proper service provider can come on board and help them. Yeah, like most of the projects in India, what we see is the budget is not available. Yeah, because it was not envisaged. Yeah, and the projects are bid and the jobs are handed over, but because of these reasons, they're unable to deliver because there is no visibility of these models and what is happening in the design on ground. Yeah, there is a total disconnect. So definitely is. That's what I'm coming back to again, the same thing. Yeah. So when critical infrastructure projects are there, BIM should be a mandate. There should be a kind of a right pre-qualification advisory board sitting at the top to see that who are the people with what kind of a projects already exhibited outside India. There is a kind of a big success story. India is definitely a GCC, you know that. Yeah. There are plenty of players who are available in India. So they are bringing a lot of success outside India where the projects are digitally built. There is a huge success. Definitely, the kind of a bit of a pre-qualification can be made, and BIM consultants, providers can be on board and bring a kind of a value, connect the kind of a design to construction.
That's a great point, Gandhi. One thing came to my mind rather. The private companies are using BIM 3D, 4D, 5D because they want to probably look at optimization and the new elements of saving costs and or doing projects which are more complex. How are the government agencies, in your view, taking steps to or appreciating the BIM interface in the projects?
You're talking in India or outside?
Indian context.
Indian context, yes, I would say yes. India, I have attended a few events in 2013 where the ministry was coming and talking about BIM. Yeah, I was literally surprised in 2013 in Maharashtra. So definitely, I would say government is putting a lot of efforts into a kind of implementation process, but it takes some time to see that it has to reach the ground level. But the technologies, I think all the technological giants are looking forward to see that how it can be mandated. I'm sure. I think soon we will be reaching that kind of a mandate. But yes, little bit of a kind of a time and efforts are needed.
Okay, that's a good answer. We have one audience, Vishesh Dhakal. The query is that is the contract model adopted, especially from the FIDIC in critical infrastructure like this? Does it align with the BIM and digitization? How
Yeah,
is the
I
scenario
think
he wants to ask?
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's a kind of a great question. I would say we are deliberating building information modeling. I think Rajeev, you also on the global front, you are aware of it right now. One particular thing which we are facing is a legal thing. Yeah, legal. So how these digital models can be legal? Yeah, at last, finally the paper is going on to the onto the construction site. It is becoming a kind of a contractual obligation as far as the kind of a government or maybe the FIDIC the things is mentioned. Yeah, so that area is something we need to work out. Yeah, certainly. But since also we are talking the other side, the digital models are done, and there's a paperless documentation also is done. Yeah, so definitely it is these the legal aspects need to be properly complied with. Yes, I agree. There are certain things which are BSI is already working with because British Standard Institute, you know, right now that is giving a kind of a set of guidelines as per 19650. That's several parts. We are learning, we are setting up, yeah, and we lot to go, yeah, lot more to do in this industry. Yeah, we all are required to contribute. Yeah.
In absence of any, we don't currently have any Indian standards on BIM, like we have British standards on BIM. We are obviously using the ISO 19650 as the base document. So, if tomorrow we plan to make, or we are already on course of making a BIM standard for India, what are the inclusions you feel should be included with the Indian context, not global? What do you think should be inclusions which is specific to the Indian context in the standards which we are trying to develop?
Yeah. Right at this moment, what we are trying to do is project to project, we are creating BAPs as per the employer's information requirements and purpose for it. Yeah. So we're just trying to solve it. But of course, like how we have IS standards, yeah, if we talk about 456, 800, the kind of a standards as per structures, yeah, we need to also have a kind of the BIM implementation standards at a kind of a very basics level. Definitely, we can take out from the American Institute of Architectural has set up a kind of a clear guideline, and it is improving. From 2008, we are seeing a kind of standards being implemented. It's now more than 2 decades. But the kind of the documentation which is needed and it has to be legal, I think there we are stuck. Internationally, I think we are stuck with that. But however, if you have to bring into the kind of an Indian context, we can start with a kind of a guidelines rather than into a kind of a codal provisions, because the guidelines for the buildings may be different, guidelines for the linear projects may be different, guidelines for the roads, highways may be different. We can set up a kind of a little bit of a guidelines and frame from there. We can create a framework to see that, and people can implement a kind of a BEP, detailed BEP, and look at the kind of what exactly is needed during design phase and what exactly needed during the construction and operation maintenance phase. Yeah. So it is a bigger subject to talk about, I would say. Yeah, but there are kind of standards which are being built, but we can come up with the guidelines would be my answer.
Okay, one more question from the standpoint of you working in a global company. If we were to evaluate between the readiness of BIM in India and the usage and the BIM, say in Germany or in Australia, where do we stand in terms of comparison, in terms of BIM implementation?
Rather than, I would say, the BIM uh, implementation adoption onto India is picking up. But however, the kind of the skills resources where India has got is quite enormous because we are having a skilled resources to produce the documentations for the overseas project. So we are compliant, a readiness towards implementation or the resources needed, or maybe the technology which is needed is ready. But only the kind of, it is only the kind of maybe the firms, governments, mandates, something we need to work with. Otherwise, the resources front, I would say yes, big yes.
I think that's a good answer, Vikanji, but the problem is we don't want to be the back office of the Europe or Americas. We want to be the front office. We want to
Exactly.
front end the whole thing because, as you said, we are right skills, right people, enormous demand in number of users and technically qualified people, IT enabled people. And we are building IT infrastructure now with the data centers coming in with the systems of internet broadband we have. So I think we are quite nicely pitched to go to next level. Do you think any to go to the next level? Do you think what any challenges which you perceive in the Indian context, and do you have any suggestions how we can overcome those challenges vis-a-vis BIM implementation to the higher Ds, higher 4D, 5D, 60 and above?
Yeah, I appreciate CDCP and from your side and buildingSMART to creating such awareness. Yeah, I think that platform, these platforms can definitely help to showcase a kind of a success stories, case studies which are done in India and outside can help to see that maybe the firms, consultants, and maybe the government agencies can pitch in to see and try, see that implementation can certainly help onto the projects. Yeah. So these awareness need to be greatly made forward and the awareness need to be created. It has to reach the ground. Yeah. And definitely the kind of a training which is needed onto the construction market is also much needed so that the designs what are produced, it need to also be visualized by the construction teams. Yeah.
And what is your advice to people who want to make a career in this realm of being a BIM engineer or a BIM certified manager? And do you think what is the career path of such people who would like to get onto this job in the
At my
future?
capacity, always I say that the basic engineering is must. First thing is, if it is a structural guy or a civil guy or a mechanical, electrical, should fundamentally have to have a core engineering. That is must. And subsequently, the BIM definitely is going to become a kind of a mandate tomorrow rather than we may have to choose for it. Yeah. Because I said technical embedment is needed with engineering because once the models are produced, these are not the fascinating models no more. These are the kind of a digital parametric objects which speak the functionality. So once the models are produced, interfaced, an engineer need to validate them. Yeah. Otherwise, it may get into a danger because something is done if it is not validated and something we are sending a damaged product onto the construction site, it is a bigger loss. So I would say qualified guys with a kind of a basic engineering should have the kind of a technology embedment to bring a kind of a validation, then brings a complete cycle. Otherwise, it's a half cycle where a software engineer builds this model and there is no validation.
I think brilliantly said, Ravikanth. I think you have built our more confidence a little more, and we are more comfortable that there's a good future of BIM within the country, and type people like you who are bringing in such a knowledge and information to the larger group. It is quite remarkable, and for the questions we put forth to you, and I'm still thankful that you had the patience to answer them very prudently. And you're doing a great job in this project, and I hope you keep your good work continuous as much as you can, and inspire us and our the teams, the young people who are wanting to come to this forum. And on behalf of CDCPI India and buildingSMART India, I thank you for your time and for your patience and for the great work you have been doing and lovely model just showed us. And I think there's always a possibility of a deep dive into what you have shown us because I know that a lot of engineering has gone into it. And unfortunately, in this session, we did not look at the engineering aspect. We looked at the
Yeah.
visual element aspect. Engineering is too intricate, and as we understand how the designs are built and optimized. So thank you very
Absolutely.
much, Ravikantji, for your great insight. We're so glad that you were on this forum, and we thank you and your organization for your time and giving us the information. And I'm sure people who are in the audience would have really benefited from your immense knowledge and information given, and a lovely project you have handled. I mean, we are very proud of this project as a Indian citizen, and we look forward to you and your organization to support big projects even more. And thank you very much, sir, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the accomplishment. Thank you again, CDCP and buildingSMART, for giving this opportunity. And thank you, audience, for your patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.